She cleaned the office that bore her surname. The entire building profited from that name, and no one noticed for years, until a key fell to the floor. In a world where love meets power, every story is an emotional investment. Hearts of Wall Street. The key fell with a sharp metallic clink into the silence of the 48th floor. At 11:42 p.m., Cole Bennett, Chief Financial Officer of Hartwell and Associates, looked up from his quarterly report and saw the cleaning staff member freeze mid-motion. A navy blue uniform. Night shift. A gaze trained to go unnoticed. She bent too quickly, nearly stumbling, but the key had already slid under the mahogany filing cabinet that occupied half the wall. She tried to reach it. Couldn't. She stayed there, kneeling for a few seconds, staring at the narrow space between the furniture and the Italian marble floor dot. Then she stood. Didn't ask for help. Didn't explain anything. She gathered her cleaning cart and left, leaving behind only the faint scent of lavender and the unsettling feeling of someone carrying something they shouldn't have lost. Cole waited until the hallway emptied. Then he did something he hadn't done since becoming CFO. He knelt on the floor. The key was heavy, old, bronze worn by time. On the side, nearly faded, were 3 marks. HW 1952, Hartwell. The same name engraved on the building's entrance. The same name on the reports. The same name never appearing on night shift ID badges. At that moment, Cole didn't yet know. But the key wasn't in the company's inventory, and it hadn't fallen by accident. He slipped the key into his blazer's inner pocket and returned to his reports. But for the next 40 minutes, he reread the same paragraph 6 times without absorbing a single word. The image of the woman kneeling, trying to reach something that clearly meant more than it should, wouldn't leave his mind. The next morning, Cole arrived at the office 15 minutes earlier than usual. He stopped at the facilities department on the 12th floor and asked a question he'd never asked before. Who is the cleaning staff member working on the 48th floor at night? The HR manager adjusted her glasses and typed into the system, Quinn Hartwell. She's worked here for 2.5 years. Night shift, Monday to Friday, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Why? Is there a problem? Cole shook his head. No problem. Just curiosity. But as he walked back to the elevator, the surname echoed in his mind like a bell that wouldn't stop ringing. Hartwell. Quinn Hartwell. The same initial. The same name of the company, founded 73 years ago by Henry Hartwell and William Morrison. He spent the entire day distracted. Meetings, market analyses, investor calls, everything ran on autopilot, while his conscious mind remained stuck on the image of that old key and the name that shouldn't have appeared on a cleaning staff badge. At 11 p.m. that night, Cole was still in the office, not out of necessity, but choice. He was waiting, and when he heard the faint sound of the cleaning cart in the hallway, his heart raced in a way that made no sense for a man who negotiated billion-dollar mergers without breaking a sweat. Quinn entered the office without knocking. Night staff never knocked. The office should have been empty at this hour. She took 3 steps before noticing Cole, seated in the swivel chair, the old key resting in his open palm. Her eyes widened. It wasn't surprise. It was something closer to controlled panic. She left the cart and stepped back, as if seriously considering turning around and disappearing. But Cole spoke before she could move. You dropped this last night. I thought maybe you'd want it back. She didn't respond, only looked at the key as if seeing a ghost materialized in bronze. Cole stood slowly, walked to her, and held out the object. Up close, he noticed details he hadn't before. Quinn had light green eyes, almost translucent, and a thin scar crossing her left eyebrow. Her blonde hair was tied in a simple ponytail. No makeup, no jewelry, just the navy blue uniform and the expression of someone who'd spent too much time carrying secrets too heavy. She took the key carefully, as if it were sacred. "Thank you." Her voice was low, rough. I thought I'd lost it forever. Cole crossed his arms, leaned against the desk. H.W. 1952, Henry Hartwell, founder of the company. Are you related to him? The silence that followed was so thick Cole could hear his own breathing. Quinn clenched her fingers around the key, squeezing until her knuckles turned white. I'm his granddaughter. He died when I was 9. Left this key to me. It was from the old safe in the company's first office. My grandfather used to say the most important document of his life was kept inside. Cole frowned. What document? Quinn shrugged, but the gesture carried too much weight to be casual. I never found out. When he died, my father inherited his stake in the company. But he lost everything in a series of bad investments. The family fell into disgrace within 3 years. Hartwell and Associates kept growing, but without any Hartwells inside. Until I got this cleaning job, the revelation hit Cole like a punch to the gut. You clean the office that should have been yours by birthright. Quinn smiled, but there was no joy in it, only a bitter acceptance of the ironies life likes to rub in people's faces. I clean the office built on my grandfather's legacy. Important distinction. Cole ran a hand through his hair, processing. Why didn't you tell anyone? Why didn't you claim something? Quinn let out a short, humorless laugh. Claim what? My father signed papers that handed everything away. Nothing was left except debt and shame. I kept the Hartwell surname because my mother insisted after the divorce. But here, I'm just another invisible cleaner, emptying trash and wiping windows. The word invisible hung in the air between them. Cole knew invisibility, not his own, which had always been the opposite, but the invisibility of those who work while the world sleeps, who keep the machinery running without ever appearing in corporate photos. He stepped away from the desk, walked to the glass window overlooking Manhattan's skyline. His voice softened as he asked, "And the safe? Do you know where it is?" Quinn moved beside him, looking down at the city below. I do. It's still here. In the basement, in an old archive room nobody uses. I go down there sometimes when I need to breathe. I stare at that rusty iron box and imagine what my grandfather thought was so important. He locked it away for decades. Cole turned to face her. Have you ever tried to open it? Quinn held up the key. I've tried. 347 times in the past 2 years. The lock is jammed, rusty. Or maybe I don't know the right way to turn it. My grandfather had a trick something about turning it twice to the left before pushing. But it doesn't work anymore. Something clicked in Cole's mind. A childhood memory. His own grandfather, a retired mechanic, teaching him to unlock rusted old doors. Oil, patience, and pressure applied at the right angle. He didn't hesitate before speaking. I can try. If you want. Quinn turned to him, surprised. Why? You don't know me. You owe me nothing. Cole thought of the right answer, but gave up and went with the truth. Because I've spent the last 3 years managing money, moving numbers, building value for shareholders. And suddenly, there's a 1952 bronze key and a woman cleaning offices at night while carrying a story no one ever asked about. And for the first time in a long time, I want to do something that's not on a spreadsheet. They went down to the basement at 3:27 a.m. The service elevator was empty, the dim lighting casting long shadows on concrete walls. The old archive room smelled of aged paper and accumulated moisture. In the corner, partially hidden by decades-old document boxes, stood the safe. Smaller than Cole expected. Iron-painted mossy green, the paint peeling in irregular patches. The lock was old-fashioned, requiring a physical key, not a code or biometric scan. Quinn handed him the key. Cole took it, felt the cold weight of the metal, and knelt in front of the safe. He wiped the lock with his blazer sleeve, pulled a small oil lubricant bottle from his pocket, taken from the building's maintenance room, and applied 3 drops. Waited 30 seconds. Inserted the key. Turned it twice to the left, as Quinn had mentioned. Felt resistance. Applied more pressure. And then, with a click that echoed in the silent room, the lock gave way. Quinn exhaled the breath she'd been holding. Cole pulled the heavy door open. Inside was only one thing: a large, yellowed envelope with Henry Hartwell handwritten on the front. Cole picked it up and handed it to Quinn. "This belongs to you." Not me. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside were 3 things: a black and white photo of a young man holding a baby, a handwritten letter with faded ink, and a property deed. Quinn read the letter silently, tears filling her eyes, tears she didn't try to hide. When she finished, she passed the paper to Cole. The handwriting was firm, elegant from someone who wrote with intention. To Quinn, my granddaughter. If you're reading this, it means you found the key and had the courage to use it. This deed is for the property in Portland, where your grandmother and I spent our best years. The house is still in my name. I never sold it. I never will. It's yours. It always was. No matter what happens to the business or the money. Some things can't be measured in balance sheets. Love, live, and never forget that true. Value has nothing to do with how much you own. Love, your grandfather, Henry. Cole returned the letter and watched Quinn cover her face with her hands. They weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of someone who just discovered she wasn't as alone as she'd thought. That decades ago, someone had planned an act of love meant to endure across time. They stayed there, in the dusty basement surrounded by forgotten documents, until the sun began to lighten the sky through the small subterranean windows. Quinn carefully tucked the deed, letter, and photo back into the envelope. Cole closed the empty safe, and when they returned to the 48th floor, something had changed between them. It wasn't romance yet, but it was the kind of connection that happens when 2 people allow themselves to be seen beyond the roles they occupy. In the following days, Cole began doing something he'd never done, staying late not to work, but to talk. Quinn cleaned windows while sharing stories about her grandfather. Cole reviewed contracts while sharing memories of his own. They discovered they'd both lost their mothers early, that both had built walls to protect themselves from connections too deep, that both were tired of pretending not to feel lonely in the empty corridors of buildings that never sleep. 3 weeks later, Cole did something the board would never expect. He called an emergency meeting and proposed a motion to create a historical reparations fund for descendants of founders who'd lost their stake in the company due to adverse circumstances. The room fell silent. The CEO asked if he was serious. Cole responded with data, legal precedents, and an argument so well constructed no one could refute it. The motion passed. And when Quinn received the official notification 3 days later, she was cleaning the same office where it all began. Cole delivered the document personally. It's not the company back, but it's recognition and resources for you to do whatever you want, including never cleaning an office again if you don't wish to. Quinn held the paper, read it twice, and when she looked up, there was something different in her eyes. Not gratitude, recognition that he'd seen her, truly seen her, not as an employee, not as a forgotten granddaughter of a founder, but as Quinn. And you? She asked. What do you gain from this? Cole smiled, and for the first time in years, the smile reached his eyes. I get the chance to do something right, and maybe the chance to get to know the woman who carries old keys and stories that deserve to be told. Quinn stepped forward. Cole didn't back away. She extended her hand. He took it, and there, in the same office where the key had fallen 3 weeks ago, they stood hand in hand for a few seconds that carried the weight of decades of unsaid stories. The next week, Quinn didn't return to the night shift, but she came back to the building, this time via the main elevator. This time as a consultant hired to research the company's history and help create the reparations program. And every Tuesday and Thursday at 7 p.m., she and Cole met at the corner cafe, not to talk about work, but to share chapters of stories they were just beginning to write together. Because sometimes, the most valuable treasures aren't locked in safes. They're hidden in people the world taught to be invisible. And all it takes is a key, a question, a genuine gesture of curiosity, to unlock something no quarterly report could ever measure. In a world where love meets power, every story is an emotional investment. If this story touched you, leave a like and subscribe to Hearts of Wall Street. Here, we tell stories where choices, affections, and small acts of kindness find their light under the glow of New York. Because sometimes, the heart is the most valuable asset. See you in the next story.